Hi, best friend. Can you and I be honest for a second? Have you ever said to yourself, I should be further along now? Whether it's marriage, babies, healing, finances, career, you had this silent clock ticking in your head. And now that deadline passed, and you're wondering, what's wrong with me? Why does my life look like this? Why can't I figure it out? Am I ever going to get it? Is that thing ever going to happen for me? Today, we're going to dismantle the silent shame that comes with unmet timelines. Honestly, friend, this episode really is about letting go of that internal pressure and rewriting the meaning that you've attached to being on time. Because, bestie, your timeline is not broken. You are not behind. You are walking your own path. So let's just jump into that. Uh, and before I even start to even talk about anything else, I want to tell on myself, as I typically do. If you've listened to this podcast long enough, you know that I waited 9 years for a baby. To let me say that differently. I waited 9 years to birth a baby out of my womb. I became a mother earlier through adoption, which truly is an incredibly rich process. And that timeline didn't look anything like what I thought that it would look like, too. It took 4 years to get to that, then 5 more years for my next child. I wanted my two children to be born closer to each other. I wanted to meet my husband earlier in life because I wanted to have, I thought at the time, 5 children. As a turn of events, I could maybe still have 5 children, but into my 40s, that does not look like what I thought it would look like. Can you resonate with that? Like, do you get that? If you're listening to this, you probably have something where you're like, man, the timeline does not meet what I thought that it should meet. I definitely, by the way, thought, if we're honest, I'm not a trust fund baby. And at this current juncture in my life, I'm not a millionaire. And I definitely thought that I would be more financially well off by this time in my life. I thought that my life would look a very particular way. You know, we create timelines, and those become really deeply embedded in how we measure success, how we measure our worth, how we measure our identity. From childhood, really, we get handed these scripts, not just from society, but we get them from family, we get them from what we watch, listen to, sometimes uh, church, religion, those sorts of things. That we should go to college, that we should graduate by 22, that we should be married by 30, have kids by 32, be financially stable by 35, whatever that means. And then when these timelines don't meet our reality, it often leads to things like shame and disillusionment. There's anxiety, there's self blame. Sometimes we lose our identity or we get stuck in these comparison spirals. I don't know if you've ever done that, but I certainly have. And in psychological theories of attachment theory and also positive psychology really show that when we have these rigid expectations, especially when they're self-imposed, they start to create these depressive symptoms and reduce life satisfaction. I don't want either of those. And so we actually have to learn to shift from these rigid timelines to flexible narratives that are rooted in purpose, identity, and meaning. Some of the times in my own personal life when I felt the most low, the most questioning, I absolutely have faith in God. And so in those times, just questioning, God, do you even love me? Do you care about me? Do you like, I would be and I know I'm just going to talk about motherhood, but it's like, I would be an amazing mom. What the freaking heck, man? Like, what is the delay here? Why is this happening? Why does it take this much, cost this much? I had to go through IVF to bring my son into the world. We did adoption. Neither of those things are free, and so there was a cost. There was a cost in so many areas. And nothing happened on the timeline that I thought it would. I often joke that I create a timeline and then God is like, "Oh, that's cute, Brittany. That's cute that you think that this is how is going to go." And I don't mean it and like he's sadistic and mean and he's the God of the magnifying glass holding it down, burning me on the ant pile. Like, that is not at all what I mean. I think about it more like how I am with my 6-year-old, and she's like, "All right, mommy, I'm going to do this thing." And I'm like, "It's not going to work the way that you think it's going to work." She's like, I'm going to do this thing. She's not necessarily saying I don't care, but she's like, "Mommy, I'm going to do it." Like, mommy doesn't know. And God already knows what the timeline looks like. But what we do when we create this timeline thing is we start to create this internalized framework that we use to measure our progress or growth. I should be here at this time. I should look like this. I should lose X amount of weight by X day, whatever it is. We start to form also meaning making when we do this. We start to assign value and identity to milestones. If I've achieved, done, received, been chosen, then I have value. If I've done X, then I will get this. If I haven't, then I'm not. And I really hope, by the way, that you get what a trap that is. That if you're not married by 30, well, then you have no value, or life is over, or all of the bad men are already taken. I'm gonna, after I say this next point, I'm gonna pause and tell a story of even why I recorded this podcast in the first place. Um, this is also a trigger for comparison based distress. That social comparison theory shows us that we get more of this comparison based distress as a result of social media. And we can compare up or down. I have an entire podcast on comparison, which I really encourage you to listen to if you're like, I deal with comparison, because a lot of times comparison and these frameworks and the meanings that we're making of it get us to where we are. So I decided to record this podcast because I'm in a Facebook group of like Dallas girls. And a girl posted in there anonymously that she's 30 and she feels like should have her life all together, but she doesn't. And she like it wants to find her person, but these guys kind of like take her on dates and then sort of disappear into the ether as they do, and just feeling really down on herself that she isn't where she thought that she should be at 30. And I have had so many of those moments in my life personally. I did an entire podcast on perfectionism, but I sort of joke that I once was a perfectionist, and that I felt like I had to be perfect to have love, that I had to achieve, that I had to do these things because I am a high achiever. So it was, I need to do these things, X, Y, and Z. And in order to have what I need to have, I need to do these things. And then what happens when all the things that I'm doing are no longer working or they're not getting the result? I did an entire podcast. I just keep referring to all these other podcasts, and did an entire podcast on my C-section. And I did everything that I possibly could to have a baby in my house. That was the plan. And the timeline of this baby, just like, let's just think about birth. It was an over 50-hour birth. It started at home, ended up in the hospital. And again, nothing about that looked like how it was supposed to. So I've talked to you a little bit about what this is, but let's talk about what it isn't. Sometimes we really start to measure our worth, our potential, our value, just our personhood overall on a timeline, on what we should or shouldn't have achieved. Sometimes it even becomes like a moral failing. We start to say these things about ourselves. I'm a loser. I'm not attractive. No one really likes me. I'm a failure. I'll never have X, Y, and Z. And neurolinguistic programming calls these time-based distortions because we start to confuse the sequence of events with significance. Your unconscious mind really starts running programs like, if I'm not married by 30, I'm unlovable. If I haven't healed by now, I never will. But, friend, those are really faulty scripts. And the good news is they can be rewritten. We just want to avoid them being written at all, or when we recognize them, we want to freaking blow them to smithereens, because your worth, your love is not, your lovability, your value is not connected to if you're married by a certain age. Uh, Sometimes healing is a process. Healing is not linear. Weight loss is not linear. I don't know. Life, I guess, is kind of linear, but if I were to look at my life, I would tell you that there's peaks and valleys along the way. That most of the time it's not smooth, just super smooth sailing. And by the way, most of us expect that smooth sailing is, I am happy every day of my life. And then when we're not happy every day, every moment, in every way, we're like, oh my gosh, my life is horrible. Well, no, it's not. You're just not just overly happy all the time. Happiness comes and goes. Happiness is a state. It comes and goes. Friend, we really do have to learn how to navigate this whole timeline thing, because if you don't, you're going to be in a really negative headspace. I have been in a negative headspace. This is me raising my hand with you going, friend, I have felt like life sucks. I have felt like this is not what I signed up for. And not what I did not sign up for this. We have to first, let's talk about how to navigate this. We have to first audit the timeline stories that we have. We need to think about, where did this even come from? Is it cultural? Is it a family expectation? Is it a church narrative? Where did this belief that if I hit this age and I haven't done blank, then I don't have worth? I'm only worthy if I hit blank by X age. I would be a worthless piece of trash if if I had followed. I don't know that I was ever that mean to myself, but for the sake of our conversation, it's like I would be worthless if I hadn't, if I had believed that, because I haven't met any of those timelines. You know, it's interesting too, because when we think about this, just on this topic, that attachment theory reminds us that our early caregivers often shape our internal clocks for safety and performance. And sometimes you need to depersonalize those and depersonalize the pressure. Like, my mom never told me this. She never told me that I had to have babies young. I had to get married young. Ever. She never, ever, ever, ever said that to me. And my mom was married at 19. Had her first baby at 21. And I thought that I would get married young and have a baby young. Now, I did go to college, so I thought that maybe, I'd meet the person while I was in college. Maybe we'd even get married while we were in college. And then after college, the babies would come pretty quickly. And that wasn't it. But I saw this timeline again. No one told me that it's what it had to be that. But then, and again, somebody's going to listen to this and go, Brittany, You got married at 26. You were basically a baby. You didn't know anything about life. And I am 4 years, 10 years, 15 years, whatever, past that. Okay, fine. I get that. And I want you to just see that I had a different timeline. I thought that it was younger. And then babies definitely wouldn't take as long as they took. So, by virtue of my own timeline, I was roughly, let's see, I'm doing some quick math. I was roughly 10 years behind on my first baby. That that's silly. That's silly. That's silly. And yet it created a lot of distress in me. I mean, God, friend, I remember I would have birthed it. And by the way, part of this is living in faith, of saying in faith, like, I'm going to be pregnant by this day. In faith, I'm going to be pregnant by this day. In faith, I'm going to be pregnant by this day. Birthdays, holidays, dates with significant numbers, things like that to me. And then those days would come and go. So I really needed to deconstruct. I needed to audit where these timelines had come from. And by the way, a lot of times I was imposing them on myself. Number two, you need to, friend, reclaim the meaning and not assign blame. Again, when a milestone doesn't happen, we often look inward and label ourselves as failures, label ourselves as something as wrong with us. Instead, this morning, I really want to encourage you to lean into positive psychology's concept of narrative identity. I want you to ask yourself, how can I interpret this delay in a way that builds my character and deepens my story? An empowering question for me is always has been, and this comes from Tony Robbins, is what if what's happening to me isn't happening to me, it's actually happening for me? So what if your timeline is happening for you, not to you? Because when we make things personal, it becomes incredibly painful. But if I can remove the personal aspect and go, well, it's not happening to me, it is happening for me. And that in some ways is still personal, but it's a personal positive. Interpersonal, there we go, neurobiology also suggests that integration, bringing together what is with what we hoped for, is where true healing happens. Friend, your life may not look like what you thought that it would look like right now. And what it is and what you hoped for can still align. Sometimes the timeline is just different. Number three, we need to disrupt comparison with clarity. Comparison is a trap, friend. And there are ways that we can positively compare, but that's honestly not the purpose of this podcast, although I might circle back to that because my brain was just like, well, comparison is often not about others, but it's about our own distorted expectations. It's about what we think that we should do or be. I'm going to tell on myself again. I'm on a roll this morning. So, a postpartum recovery is a fascinating thing, truly. Every body is so different. Um, it's like if you breastfeed, if you don't breastfeed, if you had a C-section, if you didn't have a C-section, how much weight you put on, how much you didn't, like, I don't know, how stretchy is your skin versus how, if it's not. Postpartum recovery is a super fascinating thing. And I remember I've done this more than once, but more recently, I felt like I was just my hormones were all kinds of wonky, and so I recognized that that's a part of what was happening is my hormones are all kinds of wonky. And I looked at this mom, and at social media, by the way, she's beautiful, beautiful woman. She had freaking triplets, and I was like, she looks like she basically never even had a baby, or like 3 weeks after, it looks like she had a like a little pooch, maybe she has a food baby, like a food baby. Maybe she has a food baby. And I looked at her and I was like, wow, uh, 12 weeks, not, it's like she was back in the gym, lifting at 6 to 7 weeks. By the way, she had a C-section with her triplets. And I was like, what in the blue blazes is happening? Now bad mama jamma. I'm not going to cut her down in any way. I like celebrate that. That freaking amazing. I was going like I was still trying to heal my incision. 12 weeks later, I was having all of these complications. My skin is so stretched out. My belly still hangs. This is so awesome. And if I were to compare, if I were to look at her versus me, I would be failing. I would be a troll and I would be way behind what I thought that I should be. And that is the danger of shoulds. I hope that you can hear what I'm saying to you, friend, that I am a real person with you dealing with real issues going, all right, but we've got to face them. So I had this distorted reality of what I should be. And not that my reality was based on her, but I was like, in that moment, I was like, wait a second, why am I not like that? And I could probably give you a variety of reasons, none of which are relevant or important at this current moment. But I had to get myself out of that hole because I got into a hole about it and I needed to get myself out. I needed to reframe. I needed to state interrupt. And by the way, a state interruption is when we do something, I play a game with myself, which is how quickly can I get out of this state. So if I'm sad, if I'm angry, if I'm whatever, and by the way, I'm all about feeling the feelings that you have. And then I play a game where I'm like, all right, I get that I'm sad, that I don't look like that. And all right, well, how quickly can I get out of it? So sometimes that involves gratitude. Sometimes that's moving my physical body. Sometimes that's listening to music that lifts me up, whatever it is, where I just move. I interrupt my current state. We need to say different things rather than they're ahead of me. They're on a different path. My path is different than somebody else's path. Your path is different than my path. All of our paths are different. Whatever hers looks like is not a bearing on mine. Friend, you're not behind unless you decide that you're behind based on somebody else's timeline. Number 4, you need to face yourself. I have an entire podcast on asking good questions. You need to ask yourself good questions. When I think about finding the person that you want to be with, the number one question I would ask is, are you the kind of person that person would want to be with? It's like if you want somebody that's really physically fit, do you take care of your overall physical health? If you want somebody that's financially stable, how financially stable are you? If you want somebody that's positive, how positive are you? We actually have to be what we want to have. When I think about having a baby, I had to address stuff in my health history. I had to maybe change my eating, do some things that I didn't want to do. I had to face, is there something about me that's contributing to this problem? And if there is, by the way, it doesn't mean that I'm a failure. It doesn't mean that something's wrong with me. When we face ourselves, we can actually change it. You can't change anything about you. You can't become a better version of you if you don't ask yourself good questions, if you don't face yourself. And by the way, I really hope that you have friends, bestie, and you need to get some feedback. If there's an area of your life that's not working, it's really important to go to people in your world and go, all right, I need you to be honest with me. Is there something about me that could keep me from having what it is that I say that I want? Now, by the way, sometimes there's not. Sometimes you are doing everything right and it still hasn't happened. Okay. But maybe facing yourself involves getting your internal world right, continuing to focus on gratitude on what you have. I have another podcast all on gratitude. Yep. Maybe just there is you need to get some feedback. You need to ask good questions. You need to face yourself. And friend number 5 is you need to anchor in the present while dreaming for the future. What do I mean by that? So, Stoicism teaches us to focus on what's within our control, which is our attitude and our effort, mainly our response and our present choices. There's nothing you can do that maybe the right guy hasn't yet come into your life. Maybe you just haven't met him yet. Maybe the right egg and the right sperm just haven't met yet. Whatever it is, you can only focus on what you can control. And then you want to create micro goals that feel alive and aligned. So you're like, all right, no, maybe you need to go out on more dates. I appreciated one time Leela Hermosi talked about, it was a long time ago. But she had a video where she talked about how she really felt like dating was a numbers game and that she just needed to go on enough dates to meet the right person. And she went on a lot of dates. And I'm not saying that you need to go on 3 dates a week. That might be a lot for your life. But what I am saying is that maybe you need to start to set micro goals for that. Maybe you need to set micro goals for the gratitude in your life. Maybe you need to set some goals for your own travel. I know people that are like, I can't go to Paris unless I'm married. Well, what if you never get married? Are you never going to go to Paris? Well, okay, let's start doing and living the life that you want to have, because here's the truth. If you go to Paris unmarried, your experience of Paris married will be totally different. So we can really utilize and visualize what we want to have in the future without attaching a timeline. The timeline is the part that gets tricky. It has to be by this date rather than going, you know what? I see this in my future. And praying is a part of this. Praying in some ways is a dream for the future. Somebody I feel like is going to be like, I can't believe you said that theologically. All right. Praying is utilizing this tool with your faith attached to it. God, help me to trust the timing of my life. Help me to steward what's right in front of me with a hope for what's to come. I'm still believing that God's going to fill my house with more little feet in his timing, in his way. But I have to steward what's in front of me right now, which is the two sets of little feet in my home, and not get so focused on the other feet that I'd like to have that I miss out on that. Number 6, you need to create a new timeline, friend, that reflects who you are becoming. Sometimes we have baggage in areas of life. Sometimes when thinking about dating, your unconscious template is arranging, you wouldn't notice the right kind of guy if he was staring right in front of you, waving at you, saying your name, because your template is a little jacked up. So maybe you need to utilize some breakthrough techniques and get some emotional weight behind and release the emotional weight behind, I should have this by now, or the baggage behind what it is that you even think that you want. And write a new timeline. Create a new timeline. Create a new future. The future you, who you are becoming, that's really based in your purpose, your values, who you want to be, not who you were told to become, but who you are becoming. Because, friend, the timeline needs to be adjusted. So maybe you need to release stuff and you need to focus on the future that you want to have. And then whatever it is, whatever area of life it is, whatever the thing is, you have to take action on it. You must do the thing. If you want to meet someone, you must go on dates. If you want to be financially secure in your future, you must save money. If you want to make babies, you must do the thing that makes babies, or you must connect with the medical individual that helps you makes babies. Like, you must do the thing and trust the timing while you're doing the thing. So, per my usual, I'm going to ask you a few questions. Number one, what silent timeline have I been measuring myself against? Number two, whose voice does that timeline actually belong to? Mine, my parents, culture, someone else? Number three, what if this timeline is divine? What if this timeline is actually for me? What has it made possible that rushing never could? You're going to get a good answer to that if you really ask. Number four, how would I show up differently if I trusted that I'm actually exactly where I needed to be? And number five, what meaning can I choose to attach to this chapter of not yet? Bestie, girl, you are not behind. You are exactly where you're supposed to be, even if it doesn't feel that way. You have the choice, the ability to shift your suffering. If you are hurting in this area, it's time to knock it off. It's time to change things, shift things, see the world differently, kick your comparison and your poor meaning making to the curb, and to go, you know what? My life doesn't look like what I thought it would look like exactly right now. And how about I dream for the future? How about I start to take steps towards the future that I want, not holding to it has to happen in a specific timeline, and believing that it will happen. Start taking action towards those things. I know that God has so much for your life. I don't know exactly what it looks like right now, what it's going to look like 1 year, 5 years, 10 years from now. But what I do know, friend, is that any pain that's attached to this doesn't have to be there. I kicked it to the curb. Sometimes I still have to kick it to the curb where I go, all right, and we're not going to live in that place. So I encourage you, bestie, don't live in that place with me. It doesn't serve you. Bessie, let's have the kind of life that we want to have. Let's create what we want to create. Let's live in the emotional home that we want to live in. And if you're like, that is a struggle for me, reach out to me. Let me help you. Let me help you shift your world and your reality to be what it needs to be so you can be who you were created to be. All right. Until next week.